Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Azizah, Malam Perdana Menteri, Mak Trowell, Menteri Kesihatan Dr. Zul ada, bekas guru saya, Seri Rahman Asyad, tentunya itu utama, duta-duta, rakan-rakan yang saya muliakan. Syukur Alhamdulillah kita dapat menyempurnakan majlis ini. Saya bukan pengarangnya Mak Trowell. Dan saya hanya hadir untuk memberikan satu pernyataan penghargaan atau usaha Prof. Redzuan dan ide. Dan tentunya penerbit Marshall Cavendish, pengarang, dan sahabat lama saya, David Yo, yang begitu komited puluhan tahun memberikan sumbangan dan dukungan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a remarkable occasion this evening to see so many old friends, ambassadors, high commissioners, ministers, MPs, and it is quite a unique experience, particularly from our span of the past 20 years, to observe that finally we are able to launch a book about judicial indiscretion, travesty of justice, and attended by ambassadors, high commissioners, ministers, MPs in this great country of ours, Malaysia. These augurs were the future. I'm here just to thank so many of you who have endured, sacrificed, had this sense of conviction, tenacity of purpose to stay on course, notwithstanding the pressures, but because of the sheer determination and passion, the struggle for truth and justice. I must thank, of course, Azizah, the children, the family, who actually withstood this and tolerated me all these years. Some of them said, Papa, I think go slow enough. But I said, I don't have a choice. And the choice is to compromise with the devil. And that is not possible. I must also thank so many of our colleagues in the party, in the then Pakatan Rakyat and now Pakatan Harapan, friends, including those who are now active in IDE, who had the courage to remain committed and together had to endure the hardship. Sangit was here to represent the team and panel of lawyers from the days of Raja Aziz, Christopher Fernando, to my great brother Karpal Singh, who worked indefatigably hard because he believed in the cause of freedom. Siva was also here, Ram Karpal, Surendran, Latifah, and many others. And they went. It was very difficult for them to come back and forth to prison, to then bear with me because they were the only friends available at that time. I was in solitary confinement, so every time Siva comes, he had to listen to my at least 40 minutes of lecture. I have no opportunity to give any speech or speak to anyone, so they were extremely accommodating. And this is one occasion I joked with Karpal. Can you imagine for you to continue 20 minutes non-stop speaking to him without interruption? I could do that because I was in prison. Nobody else could do that. But they were great friends and brothers and sisters. And I remain indebted to them. And so many others. I mean, the various ambassadors are here, the representative of the US embassies here. Not all presidents are that supportive, but I must say that various administrations from Clinton to Bush to Obama, without fail, did raise the Anwar issue every time they had an opportunity to discuss with leaders. Our neighboring country, Indonesia, for example, from Habibie to Gus Dur to Megawati, those years, without exception, praised. Of course, my great friend Tayyip Erdogan, who seems to be more controversial these days, when it comes to Anwar Ibrahim, he was very committed and was blunt in all his exchanges with Prime Minister Najib at that time, that please release my brother Anwar Ibrahim. So Mark, my duty, my task is to thank, but more so to you. I cannot help me because Bayroj is here and my friend Tanong, those years, who would be the best occasion to try to introduce the book in Bangkok. But I must say, in all frankness, that I am fortunate. I mean, you've heard all the issues of travesty of justice, and certainly very articulately done by Changit, but compelling case, strong-worded, well-crafted remarks from the then Court of Appeal judge, Dato Hishamudin, who, by the way, in his own way, had to endure this difficulty. He came out with a very strong judgment in one civil case on the book 50 Dalil. And the judgment was so strong and compelling that the powers that be decided that was it, he was not to be promoted and remain until his retirement as a Court of Appeal judge. But people like him, the lawyers, the friends, who believe in this cause, actually contributed indispensably to this great transformation that you saw in the last few months. The success in Malaysia, though it surprised many when Anwar decides to work with Mahathir, I continue to be haunted with these questions all over the world. Anybody I meet, they say, Anwar, why did you do that? I said, because I believe in this country and we should be able to have that compassion and being able to forgive for the right cause, the sole intention of saving Malaysia from authoritarian rule. And this book, therefore, Mark, thank you again, encapsulates that struggle. This is not just about Anwar. It's about independent judiciary. It's about malicious prosecution. I joked with Mark when he told me about this book, The Prosecution of Anwar. I said, it should be the persecution. But so as good lawyers, they listened, nodded, they didn't work, they act on it. No, it talks about the travesty of justice. And Azizah made that remark when I was transferred from prison to the palace, and the king made this wonderful, moving remark. And Azizah was there, and he said precisely this, that Anwar, I'm not giving you this, or expunging this record, or giving you the full freedom, erasing all conviction of the past, because I have the authority and the power to do so. I do it because it is my duty to correct gross injustice that has affected you all these years. And I said, Your Highness, this is a very serious statement, Your Highness, because you are talking about travesty of justice and the judges that compromised their position and became complicit to the crimes. He said, please feel free to quote me in your major address tonight. He was referring to the MCOP Mall address that was supposed to be the first of the public speech I'm going to be given. And the king told me precisely, please feel free to quote what I said. And that is the fact that I'm giving this not because I have the authority to do so, but because I've gone through the papers and I think this country could not afford any such injustices in the future. That again, Mark, that this book should be a lesson in history, in law, but more so, what Datuk Hishamudin remarked earlier, that we should not allow ever, the courts or authorities to abuse their position and continue in any manner of form, oppression, selective prosecution, and denial of basic rights to any man or woman in this country. That, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, is the essence of what I have to say, and I have to conclude. That is, that this episode is over, but the lesson must be learned. Present leaders and future leaders of this country must be reminded that the oath of office, the constitutional guarantees, are meaningless without that conscience, sense of conviction to affect change based on the true meaning and spirit of the Constitution. With your kind permission, I want to read a small incident affecting my old colleagues, inmates in Sungai Buloh prison. In the last few days, they've embarked on this fast to protest the treatment of prisoners under this so-called terrorism law, SOSMA. Let me emphasize in front of the Deputy Prime Minister that I do not condone violence, terrorism, or compromise with any criminal act. We should be tough and firm. But we must respect due process. And from what I know, I observe, in Sungai Buloh, the new law, SOSMA, is far worse in terms of treating prisoners than the Internal Security Act. So please bear with me. Tough against terrorist acts, yes. But we must immediately take remedial action. Those who are protesting, those prisoners now under SOSMA who are protesting, must be given adequate safeguards of their rights as prisoners. Thank you to the legal team. Thank you to Mark, because you are not just talking about Anwar. But what Anwar has learned in these years of trials and tribulations and in and out of prison, almost 11 years in totality, is that I'm not ever going to compromise when it comes to the issue of freedom and justice. So please excuse me for bringing this small episode, because I think this is the right occasion. Because what is selective prosecution or travesty of justice if it is meant for one man, Anwar? I said Anwar is fortunate. You can talk about the tragedy of the trials, but still he is fortunate. My black eye incident is known throughout the world, but there's so many others, hundreds, who have suffered and not known to anyone. But that's not justice, what justice is all about. Justice is to protect the right of every single person. I mention person because not only citizens. Citizens must be protected. But there are non-citizens and foreign workers who are treated like semi-slaves. And this has to end, at least in Malaysia. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. This is a remarkable evening. I mean, I was telling Azizah, look, can you imagine 5 months ago, 6 months, last year, it is unthinkable, unimaginable that you can see this peaceful transition taking place in this country. A very unique experience. Thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thank all Malaysians who had the courage to effect this change. Not many countries can register this change without one life lost. And not many countries could see this change with the tenacity, the commitment of so many. You have Malays, Muslims, You have Chinese, Buddhists, Christians. You have Indian, Hindus. You have the Dayas and the Kadazans and the Muruts. All surprising. All political analysts, all the experts from the CIA to the SAVAKs or whatever, and suddenly see this phenomenal change that is somewhat unprecedented. You don't thank one person. I must give credit to Tun Mahathir. At 92 then, worked again with that resolve to support this agenda. But you know, the most remote constituency in Malaysia is called Puncak Borneo. Is Willie here? Stand up, please. Yeah, Willie, stand up. And this man, member of parliament from Keadilan, represents that constituency. And I had to be honest enough to admit to him, I said to him, many years ago in the last election, I said, you work hard, damn it, you must win. Although in my heart, I said, well, difficult. But when I was in prison, of course, at the rehab center, and said, Puncak Borneo, my friend, won. It is the most remote of the tribes. And they contributed immensely to this new Malaysian spirit. See, so let us have the humility to acknowledge that all of us, including the most remote, probably least educated in the modern sense, but they are not illiterate because they understand what's happening. They may not understand the impeccable English of Mark Trowell, but they understand what justice and freedom is all about. And that gives me that sense of conviction and courage. Where does it come from? I mean, in a way, crazy. I've said this before, that earlier on, upon my release in 2004, I can say first release, second release, so many releases. I, Azizah, and the children were invited by Mandela to see him as his guest in Johannesburg. And Mandela was a bit too sentimental. He was a bit sad because he said he was president. He could not influence the leadership to secure release for me. He was a bit sad. I said, Madiba, relax. Mine was just a short walk to freedom. It was 6 years. I didn't realize it was going to be 11. But and then he said, Anwar, people like us must be, because especially when he saw children, Noah and Hannah and the rest, my kids were there, and he was I could sense he was a bit disturbed. He said, Anwar, we must be mad or crazy to do what we did. Because he was thinking that Azizah and the children suffered in the process. There's the problem with me, people are less sympathetic with me than the Deputy Prime Minister. They didn't realize that whenever I come in, the arrival of the Right Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, one Azizah, Ismail, accompanied by the spouse. Azizah would retort immediately, my dear, I had endured this for the last 20 years. And why are you complaining? I said, I'm not complaining, I'm just stating a fact. But anyway, my response to Madiba was this. I said, Madiba, I am absolutely certain that we are not mad. But certainly, in many ways, we are crazy. But thank you very much. It is a great evening. Assalamualaikum.